There we go. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out here. It's an honor to just have this conversation. I shared backstage with our 5 finalists that I really consider St. Paul fortunate that the 5 incredible individuals that we're going to hear from tonight have in common that they all desire to lead our St. Paul Police Department. It means a lot to me. We all know that it is an enormous task and enormous responsibility that you're signing up for, and we in St. Paul are blessed that whoever ends up becoming our next police chief will do so and step into a very long line of very strong, capable, community-centered leadership for our community. Would you do me one favor and just start the evening off by helping me show our appreciation to all of these candidates together with a round of applause. Thank you. We will have an opportunity for community members, for all of you, to submit questions. If you are going to submit a question, I was just about to explain to you exactly how to do that, and I could because someone just explained to me how you're supposed to submit a question, but I'm blanking that out. Crystal, how would somebody go about submitting a question? Crystal? How does someone submit a question? There you go.
We also have index cards that are being handed out by our team.
Thank you. If you're part of Team Index Card, would you just wave your hand so people can see who you are? So John's there in the back and has index cards, and there's a QR code on your sheet that you can submit questions. They will be magically fed to me, at which point in time I'll get a chance to ask some of them during the community Q&A portion of this conversation. I'll ask each of the candidates to introduce themselves briefly. I'll ask a couple of prepared questions that our council members that our candidates, have received in advance, and then we'll open the floor up. Following the community question portion, our candidates have agreed to make themselves available for one-on-one conversation sort of on the floor if there's follow-up engagement or follow-up questions desired. Ready to go? Let's get into the conversation. I'm Melvin Carter, by the way. I'm the mayor of St. Paul. And we will start by asking each of the candidates to introduce themselves briefly and share who they are and what makes you interested in being our St. Paul Police Chief. I'll start with you, Dr. Bailey Davis.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Jacqueline Bailey Davis. I am from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the city of brotherly love and sisterly affection. I was born in that city, I was bred in that city, in the largest, poorest, most isolated, and arguably the most dangerous housing projects, as it were, Passy-Young Homes. For more than 25 years, I have committed myself to serving the citizens and residents of Philadelphia in the Philadelphia Police Department. I've worked in various bureaus such as patrol, investigations, and training, as well as special assignments to the police commissioner for police reforms, in which 95% of those reforms were implemented, as well as now I am a staff inspector in the Standards and Accountability Bureau Audits and Inspections. In addition to my work experience in the police department, I am a triplicate degree holder in a degree of criminal justice, education, and public administration, attending Lincoln University, University of Cincinnati, as well as Westchester University of Pennsylvania. I can certainly tell you that, as your chief of police, if I were to be your chief of police, I would be an active, visible, intentional, and authentic leader. I am a servant and transformational leader. I believe in social equity for everyone. I can tell you that in all of my years of living, I'm most proud that I've had the opportunity to have lived experiences. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you. I think we'll ask folks to just hold so we can budget our time to hear from our candidates. I imagine we'll have a lot of things we'll want to clap for, but we'll ask you to reserve it all. So at the end, we'll ask you for a big, huge round of applause to thank all the candidates for all the amazing answers they'll give us over the next 90 minutes or so.
That was my bad, sorry.
No, not at all. I appreciate that, Commander Berrien.
Good evening, buenas noches, No John, Habin Watsanek, and Holloway. I'm still working on those. My name is Pamela Berrigan, and I want to thank you for your time, for coming and meeting your candidates as police chief. I also want to thank the candidates and wish you good luck with everything. I am honored to be here. I was born and raised in Ecuador, and I cannot believe that a girl that was raised there is now here, standing in front of you, sitting in front of you, as a finalist for the St. Paul Police Chief. I am very, very proud of my upbringing. I'm very thankful to my parents, to my husband, and especially to this community. This community has been my home for the last 31 years. It has given me opportunity to thrive and serve you for the last 26 years as a police officer. I am dedicated to service, and for that reason, I have risen through the ranks. I have worked with investigations. I have worked with officers in patrol. I have learned from my coworkers. I have led my officers, and I have learned from all of them. So I'm very thankful for you being here and for the opportunity to address you directly. Thank you.
Commander Hallstrom.
My name is Kurt Hallstrom. I am the current senior commander of the Eastern District. I've been a police officer for coming up on 27 years, if you can believe it. Very proud and honored to be sitting. Pamela and I were in academy together, representing 99-2 very well here, I have to say. I commend all four other candidates for this position, and at the end of the day, tomorrow I'll still be Kurt Hallstrom. So I appreciate all of you and the effort that you've had to put into this. So I'm the current senior commander for the Eastern District. Before that, I was the senior commander of special operations. Before that, I was the patrol commander in Central District. I have spent all but 1 year of my career wearing the St. Paul Police uniform. I'm very honored to have done that and worked with so many talented women and men that put the uniform on. I'm also very community oriented. There is no doubt in my mind that I'm sitting here today because of the relationships and the people that I've gotten to know and work with over the years. Thank you.
Thank you. Commander Henry.
Hello, and thank you for having me here. And again, congratulations to everyone here, and thanks to the folks for coming in. My name is Axel Henry, and I'm a commander with the St. Paul Police Department. I was born and raised in the city of St. Paul. I'm a proud graduate of Webster Magnet Grade School, Murray Junior High School, and St. Paul Central High School. I grew up here in the city, and this is where I also live. I'm very proud to be a St. Paul police officer. I've been a police officer since 1995. I spent the last 27 years serving the city, trying to be and work with the community to help everyone, to help folks out. I've worked in every major group our department has. I've been a commander for the last 12 years, and I've attended all of the training the FBI Academy training, as well as the Shannon Leadership Institute. And I'm interested in this position because I want to do meaningful work for the city of St. Paul. This is where I'm from. This is this town that raised me, and this is where I live. Thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming out. So my name is Stacy Murphy. I am currently the Assistant Chief of Police for the St. Paul Police Department. I've been with St. Paul for over 20 years now. Love everything about the city and the department. It's been a great career for me. I've risen up through the ranks, started out with patrol. I worked patrol in all 3 districts. I was the only female on our SWAT team as an officer. Worked as a sergeant in investigations and a variety of other administrative assignments. I was the commander of our training unit, so overseeing all of the training for our academies, our new recruits, as well as the entire department. Actually, during the civil unrest that I'm sure everyone remembers back in 2020, I was promoted to a deputy chief of our community engagement division during a very turbulent time in our community. Oversaw a variety of different units within the community engagement division, a lot of our outreach, worked very closely with Pam, and I'm just excited to be here, and thank you all again for coming out.
And we'll ask Commander Berrigan to start with the next question. My first question for you all is this. St. Paul has spent the last 2 years, at least, at the intersection of a national surge in violent crime that makes us all feel less safe and a strong demand for a new style of policing since the murder of George Floyd. How would you balance these two sometimes competing demands and constituencies as chief?
I want to quote Sir Robert Phil, which is the father of modern policing, that says that the only authority that we have as police officers is whatever you as community can give us. So in base of that, the St. Paul Police Department, we have done really good things. We have learned a lot of the mistakes that we have made before. And we know that it was in troubling times where we need to pull together. This is not a silo for the police department. We need to work together. We need to open spaces and invite people to come and be at the table. It's not us against the community or us against them. We have to work together in order to move forward in any kind of crisis. So I am very thankful that our police department is very forward thinking. Also thankful that we have really good partnerships. And an example of that is that we just signed the agreement that we have with the NAACP that has been in place since 2001. That's 21 years of continuous conversation of what is working, what is not working, what should be changed. That's the kind of department that who we are. That's the kind of officers that honorably serve you because they have that heart of service, and they want to make sure that all the aspects in the police department is being taken care of. As your chief, I will be the front so I can speak for my officers with dignity, with respect, with honesty and humbleness. When we make a mistake, we will own it. And you will see me, the first one, saying that we make a mistake, and it will be me who faces you. If my officers are doing a good job, they will be the ones who get the praise. It will not be me. Thank you.
One thing I can tell you for sure through the relationships that I've developed and fostered in the community is that no citizen, no matter race, religion, creed, or color, is tolerant of violence in our community, no matter where that's coming from. That's one thing I consistently hear over and over and over again is we want to feel safe in our communities. With that, we also have to be mindful and careful that we treat people fairly and justly and with accountability. They need to feel that the system is in place for them, for their benefit, and respect for everyone. The job in the world has changed greatly over 20 years. We no longer work in a society that's Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. You should feel comfortable being able to go to the movies, go out and hang out with your buddies, go to the club, whatever it is, at all hours of the day without having to worry about being stopped by the police. We need to make sure that our officers are taking action based upon fairness and the facts of the situation and not based upon any biases or anything like that. We need to build the relationships with our communities so that the trust is enough to tell us who the victimizers are in our world. We need to have those relationships. People know who's causing harm in our community. We need to then take that and partner with our communities to facilitate a conversation on how we need to address that. The community needs to feel a part of the response.
Henry.
Thank you. At the heart of this question really is talking about these issues of the surge in violent crime and the demand from our public to have a new style of policing. And the question says, sometimes these are competing demands. Well, I don't think that they are. I think that they are answered by the same issues. I think the new way that our public is asking us to police our communities is to police it with us. It's the community are the police and the police are the community. And that is going to be the new style with which we address the different problems in the community. Right now, I'm working with two other commanders on the Aspire program through the Office of Neighborhood Safety, where we're focused on just that. We're looking at working with our community to address law enforcement issues to deal with those violent crimes. So the feeling that those are competing issues, that is the new demand that we are all looking for. to work with our communities, to police our communities with the community, and come together to identify solutions that work for everybody in the community. We talk about having processes. We want to make sure that those processes are known to everybody, that people feel involved in those processes, and those processes are fair. That's how we create credibility and authenticity with our communities, and those are really where the answers for our future problems lie. We have done this before. We know what works in our city. Success leaves clues. And if we come together as a community and create those answers for each other and with each other, we will be successful.
Chief Murphy.
So the tragic death of George Floyd that we all experienced in 2020 was unlike anything that any of us have experienced in our careers. The civil unrest that followed and everything that's happened with our community, with our police department, it really brought a whole new level of community partnerships, something that our police department, St. Paul Police Department, has been really good at in the past. But we've taken that with, again, our city, our community, our other law enforcement agencies to an entirely new level since then. Really, the partnerships that we have and that we've created and that we've built is the cornerstone of what makes St. Paul St. Paul. We don't do anything ourselves as a police department. We really rely heavily on the community, on the city government, all the different departments within the city to work together to find solutions to the rise in violent crime that we're seeing, all of the things that really affect the day-to-day lives of the folks in this community, the people that live, work, and visit St. Paul. It's our responsibility to help maintain that safety, but it's the responsibility of all of us to work together to find those solutions. Law enforcement doesn't have all the answers. We never have. And I think in the past, we've relied too heavily on ourselves to come up with those. So those partnerships that we've built really are the cornerstone of, again, what makes us St. Paul and what's really going to help move us forward in the right direction.
Dr. Bailey Davis.
I would be remiss not to speak of the depraved heart murder of Mr. George Floyd. I can tell you certainly that, historically speaking, all groups, with the exception of Black and Indigenous people of color, have benefited from police protections. But as your chief of St. Paul Police Department, I will ensure that all individuals in all communities, in all neighborhoods, will receive equitable services. What's the motto? Trusted service with respect? I can tell you that the balancing of these demands is quite simple. I'm a doctor of public administration, and there are different approaches that you can take. And in this instance, where we have historically ignored the needs of marginalized communities, the only approach to take is the political approach, where there's one representation from the community, from the citizens, your voice is being heard, you being seen, and you being valued. Then it's number two, the responsiveness of the police department, that whatever you say as we work for you, that we institute what you want us to do. And then thirdly and lastly, it's about accountability. The bottom line is, when you talk about community policing, if it's not authentic, if it's not intentional, it's not going to work. You can't get by and think that you're going to have these relationships with the police and the community when in fact things are performative and not substantive. So I'm just going to simply say, with that being said, I'm not here as a transplant from Philadelphia to come to St. Paul, 1,000 miles away, upending my life to check some boxes. I told you I'm a servant and transformational leader, and I'm here to serve and transform lives, and to ensure that everyone has that trusted service with respect. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question will start with you, Senior Commander Hallstrom. The question is, by which quantifiable metrics should the effectiveness of a police chief be evaluated?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's difficult to define in a quantitative manner the metrics that are traditionally have been used to define a police department. Traditionally been done with crime rates, arrest rates, things like that. It's easy to measure these areas, however, they often come as a cost to the community and to the communities that are most vulnerable. Does more arrests this year make the city safer than it was last year? I don't believe it does. Is the reduction of a particular crime rate mean the chief's actions and policies were effective? Not necessarily. I believe a chief should be judged by the compassion they show and the connections and relationships they have to the community they serve. A chief should be judged by the culture of their department, the collaboration, cooperation, compassion, and partnerships that their officers show on a daily basis when they're out serving the community. Today, more than ever, recruitment of people into the law enforcement field is at a tipping point. The number of individuals going into the profession is not keeping up with the demand, especially in larger agencies like St. Paul and Minneapolis. A quantifiable measure of the next chief will be who they hire and how they hire them. We need to promote the profession and bring individuals from all walks of life and corners of the world, not just to diversify the department, but to meet the needs and expectations of our communities in which we serve.
Commander Henry.
Thank you so much. You know, this is a really great question because it brings into effect a lot of things that Senior Commander Hallstrom just said. We typically measure our success by things like the murder rate and other issues. Now, I think it's very fair for the city and the community to judge those metrics and say that, yes, if 38 murders, which was a record last year, is something we experienced, that I think the community has an expectation that we can do something about that. I think that's a problem that we work on together. I don't think it's a problem that we solve all by ourselves, but we can come together as a community and work as a community to identify those solutions. So I think that the data points and the typical things that we measure crime by are fair. They should be on the table for a chief of police, and the chief of police should have to answer for those things. But the big issues that we all know are concerning for our country are issues like trust. And trust is a feeling. It's not something that we can identify or have a spreadsheet for and say that our trust levels are going up or going down. So I think it's also important that we identify new ways, like the types of folks and the efforts we make and the relationships we establish and connections we make in the community. How we work to onboard folks and what those attitudes are about that. How many times are we coming together as community, as a whole, to work and solve problems together? And then at the end, if the data points and the metrics aren't there, we know that that system isn't working. But we have to be courageous enough to try at these things, experience these things, work together to solve the problems and come back. So I would say that I feel that that data is fair, it's on the table, but it also can't be the only thing. But we have to be careful because things that are the most important for us are our relationships and the trust that we establish with each other, and trust can't be measured by a data pointer on a spreadsheet. Thank you.
Assistant Chief Murphy.
Thank you. So I'm in agreement with much of what was already said. There is no lack of data in law enforcement. We can pull all kinds of crime statistics, clearance rates, rates of complaints on our officers, whether they're sustained, not sustained. There's no lack of data. I think that that's really difficult for that to be the metrics in which we measure our police chief. I completely agree. The level of trust that our community has in our department is a direct reflection of the chief of police. The chief of police sets the tone, the expectations. We have a long history of very high expectations in the St. Paul Police Department. That's really what sets us apart from a lot of other agencies. We're well known across the country. Folks come to us for the training and experience that our officers have, and we openly and freely share that with others. Those are the types of things that I believe really reflect upon the chief. Getting out in the community and having those open dialogue and open conversations with the community, that's how the chief of police is going to know how he or she is doing. If the folks don't feel safe, the fact of the matter is, prior to the most recent jump in crime, violent crime that we've seen, crime rates were going down, and data showed that folks felt less safe, even though crime was going down. That's a problem. If people don't feel safe in the community, then there's something that we need to change as a police department to help folks that, again, live, work, and visit our great city feel safe, regardless of what the crime data is telling us. That's the most important thing for us.
Dr. Bailey Davis.
I can say that, ladies and gentlemen, I can concur with everything that the candidates have stated. I can also tell you that if you're talking about the metrics of crime and clearance rates, as a commanding officer in Philadelphia, I worked in an area where they called it the belly of the beast, because it was East Division, or Little Beirut. And I can tell you that I assembled and led an exceptional team of officers whom we authentically communicated and partnered with the community to the point where we resulted in double-digit decreases in violent and property crimes. So if I have to be judged based upon quantifiers of crime and clearance rates, I think I'm okay with that. But also I agree with the candidates when you talk about surveys. I think surveys would be an excellent idea for people to get more of a qualitative analysis of whether or not the chief is doing an effective job. I'm a hands-on individual, I'm active, I will meet you where you are, regardless of your background. I will meet you at church, I will come to church, I will meet you in all instances. I love people. I believe that people of all backgrounds should have the right to feel safe, should have security, and most of all have the confidence in their police department to protect them and have a leader who is ensuring that they are all protected.
Commander Berrigan.
Well, it's hard to follow those answers because we all kind of agree on the same things, yes. Right? But we can touch a little bit. I would like to touch in the quantity and the quality, right? It's hard to put a number in quality. If I understand that we need to be measured by something because that is some of the grants that we receive, some money that is going to come is because federal funding needs numbers, right? So us having those numbers are necessary, and sometimes we forget that. I think by measuring how we are victim-centric, when we make sure that we are actually measuring our case clearance, that they're benefiting our victims, I think that will be the change I would like to see. And also how we do our recruiting. What kind of people are we recruiting? Are we recruiting within our diverse community? Are we opening opportunities for people that are underrepresented to be in those spaces? Are we opening spaces for our current officers to promote and also for our civilian employees to be part of that conversation? So that will be the quantity part, right? That's much easier to analyze and much easier to find. In the quality part, I think I will go with our work that we've been doing as a police department. In order for us to serve the community, we need to be reflective of the community. We need to be in the community. We need to be accessible. And as a chief, I will do just that. I've been doing that all along in my life, in my career. We are public servants. And we will measure that as how people accept us. How is the public accepting our ideas and how they embrace our changes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My next question will address first to you, Commander Henry. The question is, what specific accomplishment are you personally most proud of having achieved as a law enforcement professional?
Well, you know, there's an urge when you hear a question like what specific accomplishments have you achieved to look back on your career and try to identify some project like when I worked and ran the body-worn camera program for the city, or the Blueprint for Safety domestic program that we had that is now nationally or internationally replicated all around the world. And I am very proud of those things, but as I look at that, I think my real answer has to be that what I'm most proud of is what actually has me sitting in front of you today. I did not start my career as wanting to be a chief of police. In fact, I would have probably taken any bet you would have offered me that I would gladly stay in a squad car and been a patrol officer on the night shift for my entire career. I still love that job. I still really respect that job, and that is the backbone of what we do. It's the number one contact point we have with our public where you get to work. And so what brings me here in front of you today is the fact that a couple of years ago, I was approached by a number of employees on the police department and simultaneously a bunch of folks from the community. Again, like I said before, I live here, I grew up here, and so I think I really understand the city, and a number of people actually came to me and said, we really want you to consider to do this. And that was very humbling. it's something that I really hadn't spent a lot of time in my career focused on. I was kind of focused on the work that I was doing right in front of me. And the fact that not only the workforce portion of our community, but the external force of our community were all coming together at the same time and asking me to do this and asking me to consider applying for the chief of police job, especially at a time right now where, as the mayor has said, it's not a job that a lot of folks are looking to do. I think, I have to be honest, that's probably the most flattering and humbling thing I've ever had happen to me in my career. Thank you.
Thank you. So much like Commander Henry, I've had the opportunity to be a part of a variety of different things throughout my career. I was the project manager to build our new training facility, which was an $18 million project. And quite honestly, going into law enforcement, I never thought I would be on a project to do construction work, but that was something that I'm very proud of. But the thing that I'm most proud of is regarding our Law Enforcement Career Path Academy. Last year, this is actually the first full year that it's been completely under the general budget of the police department. So prior to that, our Law Enforcement Career Path Academy, for those of you that don't know, is one of our feeder programs that has done a lot of work in helping to diversify our department. It's a program for folks that a lot of times are younger individuals within our community that didn't really have a pathway into law enforcement. The program helps them pay for some schooling, some college that they have. It helps provide them a stipend, some funds in order to be able to go to college and still live their life and raise their families. It's something that's been a really big asset to our department, but most recently working with then Chief Axtell in Mayor Carter's office, we moved that from a grant-funded program to being under the general fund. The reason that that's important is something I'm so excited about and proud of is because that makes the program much more sustainable. So moving forward into the future, this is something that future generations will be able to use to come into law enforcement, have a pathway to, again, help diversify our department and really pull from the homegrown talent we have right here in St. Paul.
I would say my greatest accomplishment is being an effective servant in transformational leadership in my community. I can share with you without a shadow of a doubt that I have undoubtedly shared and given so much of my time, talent, treasure, and truth to ensure that not only my community members, but that my officers all have access and opportunities to have the best quality of life. And in doing so, I will share with you some of my actions. And I want to let you know that I'm not bragging, I just bless. Okay, so first initiative was I fully funded a $50,000 scholarship for Philadelphia residents to attend Lincoln University. In addition, I've ensured that I actually provided financial literacy seminars for officers as well as community members to ensure that they are fiscally responsible and also ensuring that they can make means of taking care of themselves financially. Also, I have provided mental health first aid training to officers and supervisors to make sure that they are healthy and making sure that they're totally fit for their duties. Also, working with SELF. SELF is a homeless organization in Philadelphia where we all came together and provided our personal funds to ensure that 23 cremains which were left in the city's morgue, that they had a dignified burials for those 23 cremains. In addition, reentry initiatives. I've linked up with Institute for Community of Justice to ensure that the individuals who are coming home have vocational training to ensure that they actually have employment opportunities so that they can be productive citizens.
And 26 years, pick one thing, right? It's kind of hard, but what I'm the most proud of is not about me. It's about how I was able to help other people to come into law enforcement, to change the face of law enforcement. I was the first sergeant that was in charge of the Law Enforcement Career Path Academy that AC talked about. And at that time, it was, we were opening spaces. We were recruiting people from underrepresented communities. We didn't know exactly what we were getting, but we knew that we were changing. I knew we were changing their lives. We were changing, we were breaking the cycle of poverty because we've been giving them an opportunity to thrive, to make sure that they have a stability. A lot of them didn't have a home, they didn't have food, so we had to partner with the education level to make sure that they get that support. We also have to partner with community because they need that support. If you don't know how to get to school because you don't have gas in your tank, or you just don't know where to put your kid because there's no daycare, those are the barriers that we had to overcome in order for those people to be there, for my people to be at that table. So I'm very proud that in our first cohort, we had 25 people. Out of those 25 people, some made it and some didn't. But 8 of them right now are police officers, currently in a police department. Some of them went to other departments, so they're still in law enforcement. And the others that didn't make it, they're still thriving and they're still trying to go to school. I'm still in contact with them because that was a life-changing. This initiative that the police department had in 2007 made an impact, and what it made us as a police department ahead of other police departments with recruiting. So it's not about me, but what I can do by accomplishing and helping other people. Thank you.
Some of the things that I'm most proud of aren't really accomplishments for myself at all. It's the things that I've been able to be a part of through my career here with the St. Paul Police Department, and that truthfully is what makes me so happy. I'm extremely proud of the women and the men of the St. Paul Police Department and the dedication they display on a daily basis. I'm the only one sitting up here that wears a uniform on a daily basis, and I am very, very proud that my entire career I have put on a uniform. Not that uniform, because we got new uniforms a couple years ago, but if you come tomorrow or you see me on YouTube or Facebook, I will be wearing the same suit because I own one other suit, and it's a funeral suit. My uniform and my daily clothes is my uniform, and I'm so proud of that uniform and what it represents to our community. We take for granted, I think, sometimes the relationship that we have between the police department and the city and the community in which we serve on a regular basis. Not every city is like that. I've been to other locations. I've been to school down south, and not every agency, even agencies around here, have a relationship like you all have with the St. Paul Police Department, and I'm super proud of that. I'm super proud of the relationships that I've been able to develop and people that I call friends, brothers, and sisters that are in the community that have a big heart and want to make our community safe for all to live in. Finally, I'm going to try to get through this one without choking up a little bit. You might ask yourself, how is this law enforcement related? I'm out. I didn't have time, sorry. Was that it? Yeah, okay. Tomorrow.
We're all on the edge of our seats.
I'll be happy to throw it out.
We're all on the edge of our seats. We're going to go to the cloud for the next question. We have community members who have submitted questions online. We have community members who are submitting questions in person. Our next question I actually think is submitted in person, and that is, and we'll start with you, Assistant Chief Murphy. The question is, what is your plan to address the increasing needs of those experiencing mental health crises in the city of St. Paul?
Perfect. So there's already a lot of work being done around this. I know that the deputy mayor has done a great deal of work around our unsheltered population, and many of those individuals are experiencing mental health crisis, mental health and chemical dependency issues. I believe that law enforcement does have a role in this area because obviously we get a lot of calls with individuals that have mental health issues, chemical dependency, and we're one piece of the puzzle. I think our major role is getting them to the right place. A lot of folks may not know where to go, especially if they're in crisis. That's a very difficult and challenging time for individuals. And our role is to do the best that we can to help de-escalate the situation, in particular if there are mental health issues, but really finding them and putting them in contact with the right resources. We have our Coast unit with the police department. They do a lot of work with mental health. And we have a variety of different partners from the community and folks that really are the true professionals. In the past, the police departments had to wear so many hats, and we're really fortunate to have the partnerships that we do to be able to get folks the help that they need, both short-term and that long-term support, to make sure that moving forward, they really have those resources, both for the individual and the family and friends that surround them. A lot of times it's just as difficult for the family and friends as it is for the individuals who are experiencing that mental health crisis. Thank you.
I would actually piggyback off what you said. I agree everything what you said. But in particular, I think there's a need for police officers to have mental health first aid training to be able to help individuals who are experiencing mental health issues. And the reason I say that is because a few months ago I was working weekend command, and I went past 19 out of 21 police districts and spoke with my officers, and I could actually tell that something was just not quite right, whether it was the public rhetoric or just dealing with the everyday stressors that they deal with. I said to myself, how can they be able to help other people deal with mental health issues if they're having mental health issues themselves? That was the deciding factor for me to ensure that they have mental health training. Mental health first aid training is similar to CPR, that it helps you to identify when you are having or experiencing mental health issues or crises, if you will, and if an individual in the street is experiencing the same type of situations, and how to get help. So I would say with the co-responders response, it's very important, as well as the community outreach and making sure that individuals get the assistance that they need proactively, so things that we don't have to respond to incidences that turn either deadly or deadly. So thank you.
I think all of us are touched with mental illness, and some families or some family members more than others. So this is a communal work. This is a communal effort that we need to do together. We need to do the training, but not just the training for the officers. We also need to do the training and make a space available for training for the families. There's a lot of families that they just don't know how to deal with maybe a teenager or an adult that's having mental crisis. This is something that we have dealt as human beings for many, many years. We just didn't call it what is being called right now, and it's not being in attention like it's been now. But now we have it here, and it's our responsibility as a collective to take our part of the puzzle and figure out how we're going to move this forward. So it's about education, it's about commitment, it's about to making sure that we have those spaces so people can go there safely when we need to transport them somewhere else. I agree, it's not just our responsibility as police officers. We only have a little piece of the puzzle, right? But we have a very influential piece, because when somebody is in crisis, we are the ones who are responding. Mm-hmm. We are the ones that families are given the ability to try to help them, to figure out to keep them safe. So that is a heavy responsibility, and as a chief, I want my officers to be empowered, to be confident that they can go to those situations and de-escalate and do everything that they can to connect the dots with the community. It's not about just the police department answering to this crisis. It's about how we are going to, as a collective, help this family or figure out what is next for this specific individual.
Thank you. Senior Commander.
Thank you. When CIT was just a catchphrase that everybody was throwing around out there many, many years ago, I actually was an early adopter. I think that's what the youngsters call it today. And I went to CIT training, and then I became a CIT instructor and worked and really pushed our officers to attend crisis intervention training. I used an acronym, I'm sorry. But there, just besides the general idea of mental illness and mental health, when officers respond to any number of calls, a domestic situation, a drug overdose, a traffic crash, somebody that they're encountering in there could probably be technically, clinically diagnosed with some sort of a disorder at the moment in time, because it's impactful, it changes people, it's a big part of their life, and the skills that officers learn in CIT training can be applied to so many different things across our profession. I attend community meetings probably 5 or 6 a month, and I'm constantly hearing from the community, what can I do to be involved? What can I do to be, to help? How do I have a conversation with somebody that I believe is in a crisis moment? What can I do to assist somebody in finding shelter or counseling or whatever it is they're looking for? Those are crucial aspects that we need to be able to give our officers and give them the ability to facilitate that. We're not a solution when it comes to mental health, but we certainly can be a gatekeeper for a lot of things that our community is experiencing.
And Commander Henry.
Well, this issue is near and dear to my heart as a person whose mother suffered from mental illness her entire adult life and was an English as a second language immigrant to this country. She was confronted a number of times by the St. Paul Police Department in our city in dealing with things. And even in the 70s, the officers showed the level of compassion that you would hope a police department and individual officers would do. At the core value of what we do, and I'll bet if we asked our colleague from Philadelphia this question, when police officers come in the door trying to get that first job, well, they invariably are asked, why do you want to do this job? And the number one answer by far across the board, no matter where you go in the country, is I want to help people. And that's our core value that we have to go towards. Training with dealing with mental health issues isn't a specialty in our police department. It's a basic requirement that we send all of our officers from the chief on down to attend. It's something that we know is at the core of what we do, and it's a requirement, and we wouldn't allow for anything less. But it's a moving target. We have to stay on top of that. The path to excellence is not going to stand still for us. We have to keep pursuing it and making sure that we, as we move forward, we get better and better at those things. And it's very clear, as everyone else has said, this is not something we need to go at alone. In 1995, the migration towards us taking more mental health calls became more prevalent. And at that time, if folks remember, the police were saying we might not be the best solution for that, or at least not on our own. It's a good thing we're moving back to that unified platform. We're in a city right now with an Office of Neighborhood Safety that really wants to bring in a holistic approach to that. And that's something I think we can all embrace and be very excited about. Thank you.
We will come back to you, Dr. Bailey Davis, to start the next question. And the next question is, what is the biggest public safety challenge facing St. Paul right now? And how would you leverage data to inform your approach to addressing it?
Well, the biggest public safety threat, I believe, from the research that I've conducted is gun violence. And I believe the biggest approach to gun violence is to take a proactive approach to address prevention and reduction of crime. You have to look at the social determinants of crime. Social determinants such as poverty, social exclusion, wage and income inequality, and cultural and family backgrounds. Those are all issues that we have to look at. I would say, in addition, when you think about issues of poverty, it's difficult to tackle issues of poverty because poverty is a wicked problem. And a wicked problem meaning that it's difficult to solve because it's changing, it's unclear, it's just hard to pinpoint what the actual issues are and the needs that's actually causing the poverty. And what was the other part of the question, Mayor?
The question was how you would leverage data to address the challenge.
Oh, I would leverage the, I'm sorry.
Data?
Data, yes. I would leverage the data in terms of leverage it by a whole community approach. I believe in a whole community approach, meaning thereby looking at the information and determining the who, what, when, why, where, and how, and that is the end all, be all to being able to pinpoint responses and being responsive to the needs of this gun violence epidemic.
Thank you. Commander Berrigan.
Thank you, Mayor. To pinpoint one threat that's facing St. Paul will mean that the other ones are not as important. To me, any violent crime, it's pressing, and we need to get a hold of it right away. But if we ask me to focus in one at this point, I will go with juvenile crime. We need to make sure that we are giving hope to our juveniles. We need to make sure that we are teaching them to be accountable for their choices. We need to make sure that our youth feel that they belong in this city and they can do better. We are not teaching our kids to be accountable for their choices, and they think that crime, it's okay. Because unfortunately, as society, we have accepted it. We have not stepped up to the plate and say, this is not going to be accepted in my neighborhood. This is not going to be accepted in my block. So as the city, as a citizen, as a member in a community, we take ownership of our city, we take ownership of our spaces. We want to make sure that our kids are being cared for. So it's not an approach of you go to jail and that's it. No, it's an approach of what is that you needing? Do you need guidance? What is going on in your family? Do you have food? Are you a single home, parent home that needs transportation, that needs jobs? So those kind of things are the ones that we need to look as a collective, like I said before, because our youth need our help and we actually not helping them and stepping to the plate.
Senior Commander Hallstrom.
Thank you. Not unlike the two previous responses from the candidates, violence and gun violence is obviously a priority for our community across the nation. I believe that the biggest problem that we're faced with, especially in St. Paul right now, is our drug problem, especially with addiction to opiates. There is not a day that you can go anywhere in the city and not find somebody that is struggling with addiction right now. That's tied in with mental health, and we need to partner up with our co-responders, our addiction specialists, our community members, to figure out a way that we can help them and not stigmatize somebody that's addicted to some sort of a drug. It's not the crime of being addicted to drugs should not be addicted to drugs. The crime often comes with what you do to support the habit, the other activities that you participate in after you've become addicted. We need to separate those apart. And we also need to go out and focus on where the drugs are coming from and who is selling and providing the drugs to our community members, because our community is suffering. I attend regular events out in the community, and there is not a day that goes by that we do not see somebody that's significantly impacted on fentanyl, heroin, or some sort of narcotic on that front. Sorry, I lost my thought, but that's it. Narcotics. Thank you.
I think a lot of really strong points have been made, and it's hard to argue with any one of them. I think probably the biggest overall public safety threat is the crimes of violence, and I think part of that is that they're driving everything else. I think the threshold has come down so much for what is now acceptable behavior that other behaviors then become more believable or doable by our public. I know what it feels like. My spouse and I's house was hit with gunfire. I'm a St. Paul resident. It can be very disconcerting. You're in one half, you're hoping it was you were to the target, because then you could at least try to solve that crime. The other side of it is, if it's random, you think, well, can this just happen anytime I'm not here, or how it's going to work? So I think it's the overall crimes of violence we're dealing with. Clearly, gun violence is a huge part of that, but violence in general has to be addressed. How would you use data? I'm kind of known as the data guy in our police department. I had the dubious honor of probably being the only person up here who has a degree in accounting. The last chief and all the other chiefs used to receive the crime stats and the data from me, and it was actually called the Book of Axel, which I found out a couple of years after I started doing it. But we use that data to be very precise about how we approach crime problems. When in 2021, when we had the big surge of carjackings in the 7-county metro, I was actually with another commander asked to be put in charge of that, and we did just that. We used data to very specifically pinpoint where the problems were happening and who was driving that behavior, and we ended up driving those numbers down so low that the actual robbery numbers for the city of St. Paul were lower in that year when we had a spike over a 2-month period. It can be done. We can do it by working together. We have to be smart and we have to be precise.
So I'm in agreement with everything that's been set up here. I also would agree that violent crime is our most pressing issue that we want to address in the St. Paul Police Department. It's something that affects everyone, even if you're feeling that you don't feel safe, which is what we hear from a lot of folks. The fact is our city is very safe, and our violent crime rates are going down, and they have gone down. But again, that doesn't help with the feeling of safety. It doesn't help for the 28 families that our homicide unit has investigated for homicides so far this year. So that's something that we really do need to address. We're making a concerted effort towards that. Brooke Blakey and the Office of Neighborhood Safety has Project Peace, which is the overarching effort in order to reduce the amount of violent crime going on in the city. And the police department's specific piece of that is called the ASPIRE program. We love our acronyms. It's a St. Paul Police Intervention and Recovery effort. I looked at you because you're one of the people who's overseeing it, making sure I got that right. And really what that is it's a data-driven approach to solving the violent crime problem that we have. It's about prevention, intervention, and in the worst case scenario, enforcement. For those folks really trying to be that impact to help them make a different decision. Try to get them out of that circle of violence, that cycle of violence, without having to make an arrest would be our gold standard, as Axe likes to say. And that's really the thing that we're doing right now to try to solve the violent crime problem.
Thank you. And our next question, I think we're starting back again with you, Commander Berrigan. The question is, what characteristics would you be looking for in new officer hires? How should St. Paul ensure it can hire the best, brightest, most committed to public safety and to serving the diverse communities of our city?
To make sure that we reflect our community, we have to find people of character. People that are in our community, that represent that community, that have character. We can teach you to do police work. We can teach you to do all the assets of being a police officer, but we cannot teach you to be a good person. And to be a police officer, you need to have that heart of service. And that will be one of the things that I will look for. Somebody that has a heart of service, that their ego is not that big, but their service is it's palpable, that you can really see in what they do. By hiring people with character, that means that we are going to give people opportunities that maybe have not the best background, because life happens, and if you come from poverty, you probably have 20 jobs in the last year, and that doesn't show stability. So we want to make sure that there's some processes that we have in the police department, like our backgrounds, like our recruiting, like our psychological, our physical, our mental. Are we really looking for people of character? I'm not talking about lowering standards. It's the opposite. We cannot do that because that's safety for our community, safety for our officers, safety for our department. So when we hire somebody, we're looking for somebody that can be trainable, somebody that can be adjustable, somebody that we can trust to make the right decision. So somebody that has the character of service, like I said before. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Characteristics that I would look for in new officers is one, compassion. Compassion for humanity, compassion for each other, and a servant mindset, that you don't come to work to do some of the things that, is traditionally thought of as when you be a police officer. Not to say that those things aren't important, but nobody at the end of the day is going to remember how many people you took to jail. Nobody's going to remember, all the traffic crashes that you responded to. It's going to remember how you treated people while you were on the job. They're going to remember how you treated them and how they felt when you went and told them that a family member was injured in a traffic crash. Having the heart of a leader, of a servant, is crucially important. Guardian mindset. I'm not looking for the warrior officer anymore. Not that I ever was, but there for a while there was a lot of training dealing with survival and warrior and that type of an individual. That's not the type of individual that the St. Paul Police Department is going to be looking for now or in the future. The love of humanity and the love of people. I have a water bottle that sits on my desk that says, "Love your people." I'm very comfortable telling people I love them. And I think that's crucially important for our officers to know that we care about them. And you as a society, you could walk up to an officer and you could tell them tomorrow that you would love them, and they need to be okay with that. Normalizing interconnectedness and relationships with our community is what we need to do, and we need to teach our officers right off the get-go. And to Commander Berrigan's point, we need to hire from inside the city of St. Paul, and we need to diversify our department to the extent possible.
Well, if you're sitting out there, you might wonder if it's better to go first or if it's better to go last. This is one of those questions that it's not real good to go 3 or 4 down the line, because just all the things that are being said, I was sitting here thinking to myself, I 100% agree. They're absolutely right. The kind of characteristics that we're looking for are compassionate, empathetic, and culturally competent officers that really understand and can live and work and engage with our community and feel comfortable actually being a part of the community. As I said before, the big kind of key intro statement to law enforcement individuals anywhere in the country is they want to be helpers. We can't train your character, but we can train you how to do just about everything else. And so we want good people that come in that understand the public, feel comfortable interacting with the public, and engage with our public. But even more important, especially for the position of the chief, is going to be once you establish that process and you've identified good people, is you've got to have an agency that understands that it's got to protect that mindset, it's got to protect that culture. We've all seen and heard about what happens when the culture of an agency can come in and change the mindset of really great people that come in the door, and 5 years down the line they are completely different people than we've seen before. And culture trumps everything. And so we've got to make sure that not only do we do the onboarding in the most appropriate way, but that we as the stewards of the police department and of this part of our community, we're making sure that it's protected, it's reinforced, and it's celebrated, the types of behavior that we've all been talking about up here. Thank you.
Assistant Chief Murphy.
Thank you. So I think it's really important to hire the head and the heart. So what I mean by that is pretty much everything that folks have set up here already. We need people that have good, solid decision making, people that can think under stress, under pressure, because that is a very important key component to what we do. But we also have to hire the heart, people that have the heart for service that Pam was talking about. It was actually kind of funny when I first heard the question. The thing that came to mind is, well, we need people to do things the St. Paul way. And those of you that live in St. Paul know what that means. There aren't the words necessarily to describe it, but it's the St. Paul way of doing things. Those of us that live and work here, we understand what that means. That's engaging with a community that's really being open and willing to come and be part of the solution. We're a big city, but a small town feel. And I think that's why I love it here so much. And that's really one of the key things that we have to hire. And that's why I think looking at our homegrown talent is so very important. We have to do a much better job of engaging with our youth, our high schools, to really show them the pathway into law enforcement. We have so many people in our own community that I don't think even realize that this is a possibility for them. This is a great career. I've had magnificent experiences, got to meet some wonderful people, both on the department, within the city, within the community. There's so many things that I want to just bring these folks into, but we have to do a better job of showcasing what that looks like. So I think really looking at our homegrown talent here is what's going to help the department.
Bailey Davis.
I would agree with all of the candidates, but in particular, I believe that the characteristics that are important, one is integrity. You have to have integrity. Even as a leader, if you don't have integrity, you have no possible way of influencing anyone, and people don't trust you when they believe you don't have any integrity. Also, James Q. Wilson, sociologist and author, once said, has 3 principles of policing: the service-oriented style, the watchman, and legalistic style. Well, I can tell you that communities and color and marginalized communities aren't looking for legalistic and watchman style solely in their communities. They want service-oriented styles. So we want to make sure that these officers can be service-oriented. Also, we need individuals who can stand in the face of courage when facing issues of racism within the department and the relatives of racism and all the other isms. And having that courage to stand forth and say, this is wrong. As a police officer and even as a police commander, I've had to deal with those particular issues. And I can tell you that I stand whole and I stand firm in protecting others, and we need to have individuals who can do that. But lastly, we have to have individuals who have great interpersonal skills. I've never met a stranger. I don't care if they're white, black, Latino, Asian, what have. I've never met a stranger. And so I can go anywhere, as I did when I visited Payne Fallon and went to the barbershop and walked in and had conversation as if we were family or we were friends forever. So those are the characteristics that I think are important amongst the ones that the candidates stated. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question is, how will you keep our officers motivated and excited to go to work in the context of both the incredibly high expectations we already hold for them and the rapidly changing environment that currently exists all around us, particularly with regard to law enforcement? I am not authorized to do this, but I'm going to change our order and start with you, Assistant Chief Murphy, and come back the opposite way across the table. We're shaking things up here.
I love it, keeping us on our toes. So how to keep our officers motivated? So these are incredibly challenging times. The last couple of years between COVID and the rise in crime that we've seen and the staffing crisis that we're facing, where our officers are working more because we're down over 65 officers. There's a lot of demand on our cops, so keeping them motivated is really, really important. We just started, actually we'll be starting it in a week, and a job shadowing program. So we call it OSET. Again, we love the acronyms. So it's an Officer Career Enhancement Training. So we're taking those officers that work patrol and we're giving them an opportunity to go to some of our other units within the department to see what they do. So maybe they have an interest in working in our narcotics unit or our gang unit. Any place that we have officers throughout the department, we're giving them basically a break from the street to kind of reset, because there is a lot of stress when they're working patrol, to allow them to go somewhere else to get more experience, more training, learn things like how do you write a search warrant, things that they may not have the opportunity to do as they're working patrol. And also part of it is to hope, relight that fire. Our cops are really, really good at what they do, and that's one of the ways we're helping to keep them engaged. The other, really, it involves working with the community. This past weekend, we had our Faith in Blue event where many of us went out to a variety of different churches within the community, and just seeing the welcoming atmosphere that we had, that really helps revive and engage us and really brings back that fire. So those are some of the things I would do.
I'm super happy about this question as well, and the reason why is this is probably where I spent the brunt of my discretionary time, is conversations with both individuals and groups of officers who really right now are struggling at a time in this career where some of them have lost sight of or a real understanding of what their purpose is. We have a crisis of purpose in this industry, but we have, and it's hit our department as well. And so we have to have really frank conversations, and that's a really important mantle that the police department or the leadership has to wear. We've got to remind them of how important what they do. I literally lend every email or conversation I have with anybody, whether it's written or verbal, with what you do matters. Don't forget that. It's really important out here what you do. Our public needs the very best version of us that we can produce, and that only happens when we have real believers in what they're doing, and they remember and they have their mind on those issues. I believe, and I've said this a lot out in the community as well as inside of our department, I think although the next chief here has to be a factory floor chief. I think our people need to see that person, they need to be engaged with those people, and they need to really be explaining to our folks the why behind what it is that we're doing. And so they can really feel a part of that process. Our workforce is no different than our community. They want to know that there's a process. They want to know that that process there is something they're a part of, and they want to know that it's fair. So we have to make sure that they all understand that. And then we need to create opportunities for them to be engaging with our public in ways that aren't just those 5-alarm fire emergencies when there's a shooting or something, so they can actually get back to the helping piece that they all came on board here to do. Thank you.
Senior Commander Hallstrom.
That was a long question. I hope I get it all. First thing I think is important is lead by example. I've never asked an officer that works for me to do something that I myself was unwilling to do. Thoroughly, the best parts of my day are being out on the street with the members of the community and the officers. It seems to me that where I go, it makes it safe for them to follow, and that's one thing that I really like to do. Leading with integrity, that was already set up here today, but there's nothing harder on the morale and the desire to go out and do good work in good employees is to be tolerant of poor behavior, or poor attitude, or poor performance in others, and addressing those is difficult, but it's something that's crucially important for the overall success of a department. Praise the successes of the officers. There's almost no day that I've ever worked that there's not something that we can give praise to an officer for. Those little moments in time will go a long ways, and how much that will buy you down the road. One positive comment or one, hey, I really appreciated what you did on that call yesterday, will make up for a dozen bad days or instances where they had to go out and break some bad news or respond to a horrific crash or whatever it is they do. They leave something with themselves every time they go out to do those things. When we have the opportunity and the time to give the officers a voice, and why are we doing what we're doing? This is why we're doing it. Thank you.
Thank you. Commander Berrigan.
You stole my first sentence, actually. But I have to repeat it because it's true to who I am. Lead by example. I will not be in a situation or put an officer in a situation that will not be myself, that will not do it myself. If that might be directing traffic, or that might be just, cleaning the office because somebody spilled some coffee and didn't want to clean up. Those kind of things are leading by example. I think we motivate our officers by listening to them, by making sure that they're being heard, not just by saying, yeah, I know what you mean. No, truly having those spaces where they feel comfortable, where they feel safe, that there's no scrutiny, and it doesn't matter what's your background, it doesn't matter if you had a good day or bad day. We celebrate you for being a police officer in our department. We celebrate you that you have a family, and the family is very important. We need to recruit your family because your family is your support at home. If you're not doing well at home, you're not gonna be a good officer for me, and I'm gonna have to figure out what we can do to do that. So we need to recruit the family. We need to integrate, making sure that the officers really feel that they're being heard. And we also need your help. We can tell our officers how wonderful they're doing and how great they're doing, and they believe us. But when they hear from the community a thank you, when they hear somebody saying, hey, I really appreciate you being here, when they see a card from a group of kids or the community saying, we appreciate your efforts, that speaks more value than anything that me as a chief could tell them. So thank you.
Dr. Bailey Davis.
I would first say, I agree with everything you all said, but I also would say supporting your officers. I know for me, I work in a city that's 1.5 million residents, and you all had 28 homicides. We had about 562 last year. But death is death, and life is life, and it's all to be respected. But with that being said, some of our officers are truly drained with having to work 12 and 15-hour shifts back to back. I work with a phenomenal group of officers, so I do everything that I can do to support them, whether it's simply, hey, how you doing, you all right? Giving them mental health first aid training, making sure, most importantly, that I'm approachable. Sometimes they would say, when I first came to my district, they said, Captain, you come in and you speak. I'm like, I'm not supposed to speak? Yeah, hi, how are you? How's everything going? We're all human beings, it's like, I'm not, just because I'm a commander, I'm not up here and you're down there. We're all one. But also I believe in helping officers to meet their professional and personal goals, such as whether it's getting promoted or them trying to go back to school. I used to be a college professor part-time, so I would always help them enroll in school so that they can be the best that they can be. But most importantly, I think the way you motivate officers is you treat them fairly. You give them fair treatment, fair services. You give them the proper training that they need to do their jobs. You can't tell them to do their jobs if you're not going to give them the proper resources and the training. And also recognize them for the good work that they do and ensure that they have a workplace environment that is safe and free from hostilities and harassment.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go the same order, and I'm just going to ask for a quick lightning round, literally a 20 to 30 second question. And the question is, what do you love about St. Paul?
I'm starting?
Yeah.
I love the food. Pam and I were talking about this earlier. Can I say that? Yeah. I love the food in St. Paul. You can get pretty much anything that you possibly could think of. And I love the people, the engagement that we have, the events that we have. There's always something going on in the city.
As a person who grew up here and has spent almost my entire adult life here and who lives here, when I was a kid, St. Paul, and when going to public school here, St. Paul was just starting to become a little bit of everything. It was the little touch of this, and there was just diversity across every angle, and you could kind of look at different and see different things. As I've grown older, we've really kind of slid into that identity and really become that as a true city. We're not just almost a little bit of everything. We are really just a little bit of everything. And it's such a cool, eclectic place to be. And I think probably the greatest indicator of that for me is that I've never stood outside my front yard in my St. Paul neighborhood for more than 15 minutes, shoveling a sidewalk, cutting grass, whatever, and not have somebody come up and talk to you.
Senior Commander Hallstrom.
I agree with Assistant Chief Murphy. The food is one of the best things about St. Paul, and I say that a little bit, a little goofily, but I've lived other places for short periods of time, and I always come home, and I am so blessed to have such a diverse community that has good, authentic food, and you take that for granted. And then I just love the fact that this auditorium is full of people that gave parts of your life and your night to come here and hear what we had to say. And that is to be commended, so you should all give yourself a huge round of applause for coming out tonight.
Oh, so many things that I love St. Paul besides the food, of course. We are an inclusive city. We have 114 languages that are spoken in our district, in the school district. We represent who we want to be. We are here, and as an immigrant, I felt this is my second home. 31 years ago when I came here, I didn't want to go anywhere else. This is where I belong. And we are so welcoming that people want to stay here. We are honestly open-minded. A lot of people say that, but I can see our city, they really embrace the diversity, because it doesn't matter if you were born here or you came somewhere else, you're here for a reason. And the reason is to make our city stronger and to move forward and make sure that everybody in our city thrives and they can get the goals, whatever that might be. So I love the city because it's St. Paul. What else can you expect?
Well, although I'm from the city of brotherly love and sisterly affection, I have not had a chance to really love the city, but I can certainly tell you that what I appreciate most about this city is that you all are indeed progressive. And that's what's needed. I mean, you have a $15 minimum wage, no shade on my current city, but we're still at $7.25. In addition, you all have reforms of social equity and financial empowerment. I'm just excited if I can have the opportunity to be here. And also said this is the city, the most lived city or best city in America, most livable city in America. I think I could get used to that.
That's right.
I think I could get used to that possibly.
That's right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate all of you. We still have one more round. I'm going to ask all of you to give us sort of a 60-second closing statement of sorts. But it would be remiss of me to not acknowledge all the folks who have made this happen. I want to just acknowledge this search process was a large process that consisted of an enormous number of people. Like usually when I'm in front of a group of folks, I have had probably the lightest lifting to do to get to the place that we're in. And I just want to acknowledge there are people in this room from our city's Human Resources Department. There are people in this room in the mayor's office who have worked very hard on this search process. Would you do me a favor and just give them a round of applause? Wave your hands, HR folks. Where's our HR folks, our mayor's office folks? I have to acknowledge our examining committee. We had a large examining committee who all of our candidates met with first. That was chaired by former City Council President Kathy Lantry and also Sasha Cotton, who did an incredible job, and we appreciate them forwarding the names forward to us. And also, as I mentioned, how honored I am that all 5 of you would even seek and spend your time seeking to become the leader of our St. Paul Police Department. That really is a testament to the quality and caliber of men and women who serve our department. Would the officers and civilian staff and retired officers, I know there's at least one in the room, please just wave your hand so we can give you a big round of applause as well. You're getting a standing ovation. Thank you for that. I am going to start with you, Commander Henry, and ask for each of our candidates to give us a 60-second closing statement, after which time, as I told you at the beginning, our candidates have agreed to sort of post up in the room somewhere and make themselves available. I know they've all said some pretty incredible things that we've had to cut off a little bit early, and so if you have follow-up questions or follow-up engagement that you want to have with any of our candidates, we have a little bit of time for that afterwards. Commander Henry, closing.
The opportunity. I think we all know that about approximately 8 miles from here, we had an event involving law enforcement and Mr. George Floyd. That event didn't just reverberate around this country or this state, it reverberated around the planet. And I think sometimes we lose sight of how big of an event it takes to be literally everywhere on the face of this earth that this happened. I bring that up not because I want to bring pessimism to the conversation, but as a person who's from here and who lives here in the city and interacts with both our police department and has a leadership role there, but also is very involved out in the community, I know one thing for certain. We have the ingredients in this city, and we have the will and the ability to create an event to coalesce around that can literally have the same amount of impact around a positive event. We can come together as a community and start to actually bring healing and be a role model, not just for our partners across the river, but for every police department in the country. I really believe this. People will ask me sometimes, well, I have to see that before I could believe it. I tell people, I can see it because I believe it. And I know when we go out, we are not lacking resources. We are not lacking committed community members. The very fact that you're here today, the very fact that we have 38 people that volunteer their time to be on a chief selection committee shows how much our community is involved. And we can create events here that can literally change the country and the planet if we work together and come together. Thank you.
I'm going to take part of my 60 seconds and finish what I was unable to finish before, what makes me so proud of my law enforcement career. So I'm going to try to do it without crying, but my oldest son, is now a St. Paul police officer working in the Central District serving the community of St. Paul. My other son is currently enrolled as a paramedic, medic firefighter in Chippewa Valley Technical College with the aspirations of coming back to serve the community of St. Paul. So I'm very proud of them, and I'm clearly the servant heart that I believe that I have followed me home on a daily basis. I'm also very proud of my daughter, and she's a senior in high school, but I don't know what she's going to do. But you know, I just wanted to take the opportunity to say that, you know, no matter what the decision that the mayor makes, very difficult decision, the city of St. Paul is going to be in good hands, whether it's internal or the good doctor at the end of the table. Be honored to work for any one of them as we go forward.
Thank you, Mayor. As your chief, I will represent my officers with integrity and compassion, and I will expect that they serve you, the community, in the same way. As a chief, I will open spaces so your voices are being heard in the tables that sometimes don't have a space for you, but we need to make those spaces. As your chief, I will take ownership of our mistakes, and I will congratulate and celebrate the good things that we do. As your chief, I will be there for you, no matter what the situation there be. This is your department, this is our department, and we cannot do this alone. We need to do it together.
Ladies and gentlemen, former Chief Axtell said in his 21st Century Policing summary that the time for change is now. I am that change, ladies and gentlemen, for St. Paul. I am a visible, action-oriented, results-oriented, and authentic leader who will ensure that all residents and visitors experience social equity and the access and opportunities to have the best quality of life. My priorities for St. Paul will be community policing, organizational excellence, and the focus on prevention and reduction of crime. Thank you.
Assistant Chief Murphy.
So all of us up here are really standing on the backs of all of the chiefs that have come before us. We have had some amazing chiefs in this department that have really laid a very solid foundation for this department. We have great leaders, most recently Chief Axtell, but these are the folks that set the bar for our department extraordinarily high. And day after day after day, our officers meet or exceed that bar. We are not a department, in my opinion, that needs some drastic sweeping change. I think we do a lot of things extremely well, and I want to be able to come in as the next chief and continue setting that high bar, make sure that our officers have the tools, the training, and we hold them accountable to that high bar that we set. I think that's what set our department apart in years past, and that's what will continue to move us forward. The forward-thinking, innovative approaches that we take as a police department, that we have taken and I know will continue to take, is really why other departments look to us from across the country. It doesn't happen by accident. It's hard work. It's setting that standard and the tone from the police chief all the way down to all of our sworn and civilian and recruits, everyone. We set that bar early and we hold them accountable. Thank you.
As a matter of personal privilege, I'd like to just thank all of my staff who's in the room. Deputy Mayor Jamie Tincher is in the space. Our Director of our Office of Neighborhood Safety, Brooke Blakey, is in this space. I see one of our City Council members, Jane Prince, who's in this space. Thank you for your service. And I also would be remiss if I didn't thank our Chief of Staff for the Mayor's Office, Peter Leggett, is in the space. Sir, thank you for your service. And I also have to thank my personal team for being here as well. That is retired Sergeant Melvin Carter Jr., who is here in this space with us. And my absolutely incredible life partner, who is somewhere with our real boss, Dr. Sakina Futrell Carter, is in the space with both Amila and Miles came out with us too, so I want to thank you all. I asked you earlier, you didn't necessarily do it, but I asked you to reserve your applause and bank it all up for the end. Now, this is that moment. Would you please join me in thanking all of our candidates for standing forward?